Good evening. Welcome to tonight's meeting of Council for the 9th of July. Welcome everyone, babies included. We're, as in Freo as usual, happy to be quite relaxed, so that's all good. Nala Kadich, Wajak Mawat Kan, Karat Nija Walilat Budja, Wajinang Wajak Kadijin, we're knitting Bula This week is NAIDOC Week, and we've been celebrating with the community in various different ways the contribution of Aboriginal people to Australian society, and particularly to Wajak Noongar people's contribution to the greater Walilat area, both in the past and also in the present, and the need to build and develop leaders to continue this tradition and this knowledge and this place holding into the future. The meeting's being recorded and streamed live online. So while all care is taken to maintain privacy, visitors in the public gallery and members of the public submitting a question will likely be captured in the recording. We have apologies tonight from Councillors Thompson and Van Dawson, and Councillor Williamson Wong has advised she'll be joining us a little bit late. We have an application for a leave of absence from Councillor Archibald from the 17th of July to the 26th of July inclusive. So I'll ask for a move of that one. Councillor Graham and a seconder. Councillor Kamada, all those in favour, and that's unanimous. Are there any other applications for leave of absence? Nope. Do we have any disclosures of interest by members in relation to tonight's agenda? Nope, we'll check with Councillor Williamson Wong when she comes in. There are no responses to previous public questions taken on notice. As some of you will probably know, when we are looking at planning items, we tend to take the questions and statements from the public gallery just before the item. So we'll likely deal with them in the order of the agenda. So we'll deal with item 1 and then item 3, given that's who we've got people in the gallery for. If you can't stay for your item, probably if it's item 3, and you really want to say something, I'd suggest that you do that now, right at the beginning, so that then you can depart. But if you're happy to wait till before the item, that would be preferable. So is everyone happy to stay until we get to their items? Great. All right, so I will get through the rest of the preliminaries and then we'll go to that item and take the questions on it. Petitions, I'm not aware that there are any. Deputations or presentations, there are none. I'll ask for somebody to move that we confirm the minutes of the last meeting of Council. Councillor Sullivan, seconded by Councillor Graham. All those in favour? And that's unanimous. Is there any elected member communication? Councillor Lorber?
Yeah, I just wanted to comment on a ring event that both Councillor Kamada and myself attended at Fremantle College a few weeks ago. It was a gathering of a lot of the local schools talking about their efforts to have their reconciliation action plans implemented. And there was a wide range of different activities that the local schools have been doing. But one of the highlights was a few years ago, the Winterful Primary School won that national award for their efforts. So that was a real highlight. But it was really good to see what all these schools are doing and then coming together to learn from each other about how they could all do it better. So it was a great event, and I thank them for the invite.
Thank you. Wish I'd got an invite. Sounds amazing. All right, the deferred items, so High Street number 1 to 4. I will ask for speakers from the public gallery on this one, and I'll call you out by your names on the list. You have 3 minutes up at the microphone, and we set a timer just to give you a little beep to let you know that that's about time to wrap up. If you prefer the microphone gets brought to you, I can see there's people who will probably be more comfortable if that happens. We're very happy to do that. So just raise your hand if you would prefer that, if that's easier for you. So the first speaker we have on the first item is Julius Skinner. Thanks.
Thank you and good evening, councillors. On behalf of the applicant, we welcome and support the recommendation made by the City's planning officers for approval of the application, as well as the vast majority of the conditions. As you will have seen, there have been some changes made to the application in response to the Council's deferral of the matter at the Council meeting in May. The application no longer proposes any joint operation with the adjacent Pakenham Street business, no longer involves any use of the right-of-way between those two properties, and will not have any impact on the current use of the right-of-way by other organisations, including Buffalo Club. There have also been other amendments and clarifications around waste management and some other aspects of the operation of the premises. It's important to the applicant that the application is dealt with by Council tonight. I've just got a couple of comments or questions raised in relation to a couple of the proposed conditions. Primarily the conditions relating to noise and the rooftop bar. Condition 2 currently requires an updated or amended environmental acoustic report with specific reference to the operation of the rooftop bar in accordance with the noise regs. Condition 3 also requires an amended operations management plan with reference to the operation of the rooftop bar, and both of those things have to be submitted and approved to the satisfaction of the city. And then condition 9 additionally sets out specific operating hours for the rooftop bar. Might also note the applicant has noted, has no objection to the additional advice note that's been proposed by Councillor Sullivan, which identifies some specific matters to be addressed in that amended acoustic report and management plan. And in light of all of that, the only concern we have is about the final sentence of condition 9, which prohibits at the moment any live music at the rooftop bar. I understand council has had the opportunity to view the rooftop bar at a site inspection on Monday. And during that viewing, I think it was clarified there has in fact been live music performed at the rooftop bar for many years without any issues or complaints. And also the applicant isn't proposing any physical changes to that rooftop bar operation. So in light of that, it suggests that any concerns about live music in future can and will be addressed by the environmental acoustic report and the operations management plan. And we'd ask that final sentence of condition 9 be deleted. There's an officer's proposed amendment to condition 6 regarding waste management plans, which the applicant has no objection to. And as I mentioned, waste management items have been already updated and addressed following the council's deferral with some designated bin storage areas and other things. And finally, just a minor matter in relation to condition 4, applicants no objection to what's proposed, and I can indicate the applicant probably is going to pursue the legal agreement alternative that was put forward in the condition. But there was a reference in the last sentence to 2 separate lots, which strictly speaking is not correct. Perhaps can be corrected to just refer to the development approval operating having regard to the site consisting of multiple strata lots, because it does across multiple strata lots, but they are part of the same land holding. Other than that, Mr. Spitalis is here as well to answer any questions or deal with anything that may arise. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I'll go through all of the speakers and then we may call people back to answer any questions that councillors have. So the next speaker on this one is Rebecca Thompson.
Thank you. Tonight I'm speaking to C25071. My name is Beck Thompson and I speak as a committee member of the Fremantle Buffalo Club. So we've reviewed the proposed development and we acknowledge and appreciate that the application doesn't appear to interfere with the club's operations, and we're happy to provide approval or sort of our consent, conditional on those actions and standards outlined by the officer in the agenda document, notably the requirement for increased window glazing and an understanding that the right-of-way must be maintained. With that in mind, our conditional support for the development is also on the proviso that a clear and public commitment is made by both the city and the applicant that the functionality of the Fremantle Buffalo Club will not be compromised in any way. So respectfully, we're asking that the City of Fremantle commits to ensuring that this development and any future developments in the area won't impact the ongoing operation of the Buffalo Club as a prominent live music venue in the High Street West End precinct. That would mean guaranteeing our ability to continue hosting live performances without facing retrospective noise complaints or restrictive conditions, ensuring any new residents or tenants are fully informed of the club's operations, and maintaining planning frameworks that protect long-standing venues like ours. As you know, many of you will know, we've seen plenty of independent music venues across Australia shut their doors due to incompatible developments, rising pressures and a lack of regulatory foresight, and unintended consequences, often at the hands of state governments, not local governments. And I think Fremantle has a real opportunity to set a better standard here, one where, you know, we can have development and we can also have culture and live music. And finally, I'd like to say we're really looking forward to continuing to work with the city on this. We currently are with the state government with other live music venues in Fremantle. We're working really cooperatively with Mojo's, Clancy's, Honky Tonk, Freo Social, on noise restrictions and planning law reform that better protects the live music sector across WA. So I wanted to take this opportunity as well to acknowledge the approval of the CEO's working group at the previous council meeting, which we really see as a constructive step forward, and we look forward to participating in a robust and effective consultation. Thank you.
Thank you, Beck. So I might just get an officer comment on the ability of us in this particular planning approval to guarantee the future use of the Buffalo Club in terms of live music and other things. And then also reassure you that that working group has started meeting and will be reaching out to stakeholders like yourselves and the ones mentioned previously in the very close future. So I might just, if I can get an officer comment on what's possible in this particular approval.
Through the chair, the main things that council can consider for this one in terms of protecting those surrounding uses are these conditions that have been mentioned by the speaker earlier. So things like the glazing and the measures that are recommended to be conditioned. So we can't guarantee that there will be no issues with noise compliance against other legislation on other sites. So that is, the onus is on the Buffalo Club to continue that. But the measures in the applicant's proposal here will go a fair way to helping that harmonious relationship.
Thank you. And the final person I have listed to speak, although I recognise there might be others in the gallery who wish to, is former councillor Steve Gorman.
Good evening, Mayor and councillors. I am a little appeased with the comments of the first speaker with regard to the extension or improvement of their acoustics evaluation, because I read it and there were a lot of holes in it. However, it's been indicated that the approval is conditional on an appropriate and acceptable acoustics examination of the property, and that is my main concern. However, I do take task with his comment about removing the consideration of live music in the rooftop bar. It's bad enough the fact that the report indicates that they don't think they've got a problem with 100 people on a rooftop bar at midnight on a Sunday night. Their report says that it would obviously only be as loud as ambient noise, which I think is a nonsense. Live music undoubtedly is going to spread out over all of the residential properties of the West End. They're all within a couple of 100 metres, and you can't tell me that live music is not going to impact on Henry Street and Pakenham Street and even the High Street apartments that are nearby. So I would encourage council not to remove that clause. I think it's very important that it be in there. And council, I think, needs to examine an acoustics engineer's report very, very closely and endeavour to put some form of baffle or some form of noise muting and protection from an open air rooftop bar, which is open every day of the year till midnight. So that's my main concern, and I hope that council take that on board. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Before we go to councillors for any questions, was there any other speakers on the first item who wish to speak? Okay. Councillors, do you have any questions of anyone who's spoken? I know there are also people here from the proponent who are able to answer questions. Nope. Maybe all. Okay, well, we'll get into this item. First, I'll just check with Councillor Williamson-Wong whether you had any conflicts of interest in relation to tonight's agenda. All good? Excellent. So we, in our additional documents, I noticed we have the proposed officers' amendment to number 6, to point 6. So I'm going to suggest that somebody moves the officers' recommendation, including their proposed amendment to point 6. Do we have a mover for that? Councillor Lorber, a seconder for this one. Councillor Mofflin. Excellent. All right, Councillor Lorber.
Great. I just want to thank the proponent for coming back with some more, always clearer detail on the issues that we flagged at our last meeting where we considered this. And there are, I think the conditions that the staff have put forward are entirely appropriate because the rooftop bar is, you know, it is a glass box kind of in a way. And I'm happy with the ones that we're considering, including the increased window glazing and the right-of-way maintenance. I think the difference in the noise for me about that top bit is we've got a older Navy Club with patrons that are generally older versus younger backpackers coming in, and I think that younger people tend to make more noise. Don't always make more noise, but tend to, especially in larger groups. So I'm comfortable with the restrictions that we're placing on it at this time, and I just want to say that hopefully the folks that are moving in there and the Buffalo Club and other people that are in the West End and hotel operators and everyone else can participate in the working group that we've got going, because it will hopefully deliver a lot of solutions that we're grappling with now. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Mofflin.
Thank you. I've just got a question for staff in regards to the request around the removal of the last line of condition 9, the live music element. Does live music refer to amplified music? So not instruments being played, but someone, you know, playing music out of a sound system, or want of a better term, or is it just purely about someone up there playing musical instruments?
Through the chair, the reference to live music comes from one of the strategies put forward by the acoustic consultant. It does talk to the idea of music being at a conversational level, so it is. You probably, while live music is about musicians being there, the terminology maybe needs to be looked at if the concern is about just amplified music, whether it's a person playing an instrument or music coming out of a sound system. But yeah, the intent is that there's not bands and things played.
Okay, so, and maybe just as a follow-up question then, so under the current conditions, so if you're saying the intent is that it's, you know, bands aren't playing there, could someone have a sound system where they go and play music at a level equivalent to having a band play up there?
They could, but the conditions do require that they come back with an amended acoustic report that is very clear on what they're proposing, and regardless of what type of music is played, they would need to adhere to the noise regulations.
So Councillor Mofflin's questions probably speak to my concern here, is that you could certainly have amplified music that is not live, that is way more offensive to the neighbours than somebody with a guitar having a sing. So I guess I am interested in, is this necessary if the acoustic report is going to do this work anyway and put around this place certain restrictions? Do we need to then specifically call out live music as being prohibited, or is the acoustic report going to give us what we need in that regard anyway? So I am considering, and I won't do this immediately, but I'm considering moving an amendment to remove that line if I can be convinced, in a sense, that there's enough work done by the acoustic report to deal with any concerns about that, because I think amplified music to any level is the concern here. Or setting a boundary around amplified music is the concern, not whether it's played live or via what's the word? I feel like boombox came out of the 80s and I'm not going to use it. All right, councillors. Councillor Sullivan.
Just questions at this stage, if that's okay. And I wanted to pursue that line of questioning, I guess. So, first of all, it is clear that the acoustic report and therefore the application was essentially saying that it was background music was what they were essentially applying for.
Through the chair, the acoustic report, because the applicant isn't 100% clear on exactly how that bar will operate, it really just puts some possible strategies about what might be useful to look at for an open air rooftop area that hasn't been updated for quite some time. So that's why there is a condition in there recommending that an updated report come through when the applicant has resolved exactly how they wish to use it, so that they can demonstrate that they can comply with the noise regulations.
So this is a horrible question to ask you without notice and without going back through all of the our documents. What was the sort of noise output in dBA, I guess, that the report was based on? I mean, presumably they were basing it on live music might be 85 dBA, as we know, from next to the source, but ambient music, presumably they've looked at a different kind of output, and they've therefore have considered that the current structure is probably going to be okay. So I can put that one on notice if that's okay, and if you could maybe provide that. It possibly doesn't matter, but my sense would be that if they were saying it was ambient music, it's going to be a much lower dBA than 85. So the second question that I would ask is there anything to stop the applicant when they do their acoustic report subsequently and they do have a clearer idea as to what their actual uses are going to be, is there anything to stop them coming back and seeking an amendment to a planning approval that actually allows them to do the very things that they are proposing to do in the future, but we're not aware of as part of this application?
Through the chair, if there was something that they felt was limiting or that wasn't perhaps exactly as they applied for this time round, yes, they could apply for a variation to a condition.
And would you assume that would happen, like if it was to be live music, would you assume that your normal practice in your planning assessment would be that if it was live music, we'd want an acoustic report that dealt with that?
Through the chair, yes. For the more we're getting these live music nighttime venues in the city centre, we're obviously seeing the sensitivities between different land uses. It's a fairly standard requirement that we would expect to see updated acoustic reports.
And there was one last question, if I can, sorry, Mayor. The question around Clause 4 about changing the wording for the stratas rather than lots. Is that something you agree with? And if so, could you draft an amendment?
Through the chair, yes, I agree with that. If it provides some clarity for the applicant, it doesn't change the intent of the condition.
So perhaps if I can request that amendment to come back when I move mine.
Yep, perfect. All right, councillors. There's been some discussion on the item. We could go to the amendments that Councillor Sullivan has.
Yes. Okay, I'll speak on the item just briefly and then move my amendment if that's okay. I just wanted to speak on some of the concerns. I do appreciate that the applicants have clarified how they're going to keep their bins in a bin store and the like. As you know, that was a very important part of my concern, not just because having bins out in the street all the time is really problematic in the city and something that we do need and are going to be cracking down on, but also because storing them in the right-of-way as well, which is a very open, visible space from the public realm, also creates an element of our city that is of concern. I know the bins that will be associated with this proposal are not the only bins. There are 3 large operations that utilise the laneway. There are bins from the smaller shops, and of course in Pakenham Street there are bins from the cafe further down High Street, all of which come out into almost the exact same location into Pakenham Street. So it had been looking like a bit of a rubbish tip for a while, and exacerbating that was a problem, and I appreciate that they've now dealt with that, so that's a good thing. I also wanted to address the issue of the right-of-way. I think we've done as much as we can to identify that the right-of-way shouldn't be blocked, that it is a right-of-way and that different parties have a right of access across it. But that is a private matter between the people who own the right-of-way and the people who have carriage over it. It isn't something that we can get overly involved with, but I think the recommendation and the report does the job of identifying that we certainly don't want to be in the position of approving gateways or bin stores or the like in the right-of-way. But from planning approval onwards, it becomes handed back to the relevant landowners and their rights. The issue, I think, of the Buffalo Club, I mean, I know that, you know, obviously one of the things that we were asking for last time was a bit of a clarity as to how the different parts of the building were going to be used. We've also received additional clarity about the acoustics on the windows and the like. So I'm relatively satisfied that particularly the bedroom areas of the proposal are doing a reasonable amount, the normal sort of required amount to deal with their windows and the like. And in any case, even if there wasn't a legal requirement that we could apply to make sure they soundproof themselves, the Port Authority and their regulations pretty much does the same thing. And so that's a requirement within the proposal anyway. So that part of it, I think, is dealt with. I think the only thing that still concerns me is the rooftop bar, not because it can't operate successfully, but because we as a community need to make sure that it does operate successfully into the future. And that means any changes of operation, any intensification, any subtle variation between, as I think was said, you know, between the demographic that might use it and what their expectations are of utilising a space like that. So, you know, I've been up there on quite a few occasions when there has been music and the like, and it can be quite noisy. And the thing is, it's a tin shed with a lot of glass at the highest point of the building, from which you can see virtually half of the residential units in the West End. So it's not without its challenges. And so we would be rightfully concerned that there needs to be a proper acoustic report done that covers all of the different ways the proponent seeks to use that rooftop bar. I'm absolutely not prepared to take out that clause about live music at this stage. I'm not saying live music shouldn't occur there in the future, but if it is seriously going to be proposed, or if you are seriously going to make much louder activity up there, then you also have a responsibility to actually do an acoustic report that genuinely mitigates the impact on that on surrounding areas, not the least your own people in your building who are sleeping there, or the backpackers right next door, which the applicant also has an interest in. So there is a responsibility. We don't have that information in front of us, so we shouldn't be saying, look, it'll be all right, we'll just let you do whatever you like, do your own acoustic report, and that's all we need to do. Well, that's not all we need to do. We need to make sure that all parties in these environments are collectively responsible for making the sort of changes. And that might just be from going from ambient music to a DJ or the like. And it's not just about noise. You know, when you've got a glass box that basically is like a lighthouse sitting up there, if you've got a disco, you know, with flashing lights and lasers flying everywhere, well, that can have an impact as well. And no one is suggesting these things aren't resolvable, but they do need to be properly proposed and the impacts properly assessed and the mitigation measures properly implemented through either physical or operational practice. And that is the way, you know, we as a responsible authority should deal with all applications. And so when that information is available, I'd be more than happy to, as a planning assessor, approve it or consider it based on that information, but not before. So with all of those things in mind, I would like to move a amendment as suggested, which is really just to include an advice note that kind of covers that to some degree, gives the I guess a heads up that that's what we're expecting. So if I can move that amendment now.
And just noting that included in your moving that amendment is the amendment above to part 4 around multiple strata lots.
I'm happy to deal with that separately if you want.
Yep. Okay.
So we'll just move this one because it might, yeah.
Yep. All right. Sure. Okay. So
Well, I can move this, given it's up on the screen, I'll move. Sorry, no, that's my one.
Just
Yeah,
do the
so we'll
advice
move that
note.
one first.
Yep. Do I have a seconder for the advice note? Councillor Williamson Wong. Any debate on the advice note? Okay, I'll put that one to a vote unless Councillor Sullivan wants to close, which might seem weird at this point. All right, all those in favour? And that's unanimous. If we can then go to the other amendment to condition 4.
Yep, so moved.
And seconder? Anyone? Councillor Moughlin. Any discussion on that one? Okay, all those in favour? All right, so we'll go back now to the item as amended. So I flagged earlier that I would look at an amendment to condition 9 and the statement, no live music is permitted from the rooftop bar/deck. Some words that have been used in the acoustic report are possibly better. So I'm proposing an amendment that says, instead of that line, amplified music will be kept to an ambient/conversational level only, which I think doesn't then unrealistically prohibit one type of music over another when both could be equally disruptive. So those are the words that I'd propose we substitute for no live music is permitted from the rooftop bar/deck. Does anyone wish to second that? Councillor Moughlin? Yep.
Yeah, I'll second
Right,
that.
over
And-
to you, Councillor Moughlin. then.
Yeah, and just maybe a question to yourself, whether it's even better just say any music as opposed to amplified. So you could have, you know, acoustic instruments in some shape or form, a big drum kit up there that's not amplified, making a hell of a lot of noise. So if it's any music, if that
Yeah.
would be appropriate.
Yep, I'd be comfortable with that. I think that's fair, and I think it's still just, the intent is the same. So any discussion on that amendment? So it's been moved and seconded. All those in favour? And against? Councillor Graham against, so that's carried. So back to the item as again amended. Anything further? All right. Well, Councillor Lorber, did you wish to close? All right, I might just say thanks for showing us around and for all the different stakeholders for being there so we could ask lots of questions, which we duly did. And we look forward to continuing to work with everyone who will be part of the building going forward to get a really good outcome down there. So I'll put the item to a vote. All those in favour? And against? And it's Councillor Graham against, so that is carried. So that is an approval from us. Is this a Jade? No, this is, oh, you get an approval tonight. How good is that? All right. Okay, we'll keep moving through the agenda. We'll go to item 3. I realise some of you may wish to leave, and that is perfectly acceptable. These meetings, it's an approval tonight. It's got approval tonight. Apologies if I wasn't loud enough. There you go. Thank you. I know where you're all going to celebrate now. Yeah, we'll see you after. All right. We've got nobody here as far as I can see on item 2, so I'll go to item 3 and then come back to item 2. So this is the car wash item. And the first person I have listed to speak on this one is Ian Kerr. Ian knows the drill. Thanks, Ian.
Thank you, Mayor. We all use car washes from time to time, but there are a great many reasons which have been extensively covered in the 81 submissions against this proposal why this is an inappropriate development for this site. Unfortunately, the summary in the main agenda report fails to do justice to them, failing to mention, for example, concerns about the proposal being a missed opportunity and being inconsistent with the intent of mixed-use zoning. Most of the 81 submissions opposing the development are substantial. They're not just one-liners. But as conversely, all but 2 of the 10 supportive submissions are just a few lines. And one of those 2 is from the owner of the property. Now, as elected members, I'm sure you will all be very used to receiving objections on the basis that proposals represent overdevelopment of a site or location. So what is striking about the response to this proposal, not just from myself, but from most of the 81 objection submissions, is the number of submissions that argue it is effectively underdevelopment of a property in a prime location. In the local planning scheme, a car wash is not an as-of-right use for the site, and approval would require, under the planning scheme, that council exercise its discretion to do so. In other words, council must have exceptional reasons for approving a car wash in this location. Notwithstanding the site's mixed-use zoning, it is almost entirely surrounded by residential properties, or, to the south, a mixed-use property with 4 residential units. And under the planning scheme, a vehicle wash is an ex or not permitted use in residential areas. In addition, and looking on the positive side for the site is one of the most accessible locations by bus, walking or cycling in the inner Fremantle area, with high-frequency buses to Murdoch University and Fiona Stanley Hospital, as well as to Fremantle itself. If we can't get innovative medium-density housing at a location like this, I struggle to see how targets or expectations for increased population in inner Fremantle are likely to be achievable. At the very least, a car wash here would set an unhelpful precedent. The City of Fremantle's Strategic Community Plan 2024 to 2034 sees Fremantle as a livable city with sustainable growth in city centre population. Frankly, it is difficult to see how the current proposal is at all consistent with sustainable growth in city centre population. I urge you, therefore, not to support the officer recommendation for approval of this proposal and to support Councillor Sullivan's alternative recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, and right on time too. Stephen Hodgkin is the next speaker.
Thank you, Mayor and Councillors. As Ian mentioned, that there are residences next to this proposed car wash, and I live right next door to this site. I appreciate Councillor Lorva's proposed amendment, and I fully support Councillor Sullivan's proposed alternative motion. My question tonight is whether the city, in good conscience, can approve a facility that barely meets the noise regulations and only when everything works perfectly. I'm not an expert on this topic, but the proponent's own acoustic report seems quite optimistic to me, and I have some concerns. Firstly, with every mitigation in place, looking at page 7 of Appendix 4, the acoustic assessment in Table 3, 6.3, sorry, the model nighttime level is exactly at the 41 decibel legal limit. It seems that there is no margin for error and that one noise or minor fault tips it into breach. Furthermore, my understanding is that this 41 decibel limit already includes a blanket 5 decibel penalty for possible tonality, yet no data on the actual noise signature of the vacuums or the wash motors is provided, and I question whether a measured tonal component breaches this limit. Furthermore, the plan requires and assumes that the roller doors will be closed throughout every wash. A single jam door, power failure, or driver who disables the sensor instantly removes this assumption and takes the plant over the noise limit. It's also worth noting that the model accounts for car door slams under impulsivity, but it seemingly omits that queuing vehicles also generates loud exhausts, booming stereos, revving of engines, and loud car horns, among other things. Finally, no vibration study accompanies the application, so can council verify that low-frequency vibration from compressors, pumps, and vacuums will not propagate. In other words, council, a 0 decibel safety margin and a 0 tolerance for mechanical or human error. Yet the development application also states, and I quote, the motor vehicle wash will generally be unmanned with staff attending periodically for routine maintenance. Council, an unmanned facility cannot adequately address a roller door that is stuck open. An unmanned facility cannot adequately address noisy patrons. Once the site is built, what does enforcement look like? My final point here is that the State Supreme Court confirmed in Sharon Property v. JDAP in 2022 that councils can discount optimistic acoustic modelling and adopt stricter assumptions where residents' amenity is at risk. I respectfully urge you, as Councillor Sullivan proposes, to refuse this application on acoustic and vibration grounds, or at least defer the item pending an independent peer review that demonstrates a real, fail-safe margin, not theoretical compliance balanced on a knife edge. Residents living here deserve more than the minimum. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. Sam Harper.
Good evening, Mayor Fitzharding, councillors and city officials. Like many others here tonight and those that objected to this project earlier in the consultation phase, I'm one of the neighbours to the 234 South Terrace development application, and I stand to be directly impacted along with my family by the development and use of this site. My question tonight is whether the advice you've been given on this matter has considered the practical realities of an operation such as this and the unintended impacts it may have. It is my understanding that from the submitted materials that this car wash intends to operate right on the upper bounds of what is legally permissible without the buffer or issues of unintended vibrations or noise caused by the cars it seeks to service. Further, the mitigant of a sound-reducing wall well short of the balconies of the 8 residences that neighbour this property offered little utility to prevent this noise from travelling into their homes. Many of us who have apartments in this building do not have double glazed glass and do not have the luxury of being able to ignore this noise operating for most of the day. Very few businesses in the city operate in these hours as well, and further, as the parent of a 10-month-old next door with her nursery window facing this development, this concerns me. Given that there are multiple other car and dog wash options which exist in the city of Fremantle, few of which directly neighbour residences and operate in the hours that this place is proposing to, and that actually employ people and create opportunities for the people that work there, this proposal of a self-service car wash does not even create new jobs or opportunities for our community and offers little additional utility. Another concern I have is around public safety. Living at 240 South Terrace has highlighted the dangers of the South Street South Terrace intersection. In the past 5 years that I've lived there, I've personally seen multiple car crashes, hundreds of near misses, and consistent ignoring of no stopping or parking areas that further impact sightlines and the safe operation of a vehicle in that area. From your own city records, you'll see how frequently the traffic lights have to be replaced after they've been hit by cars taking the corner too quickly. From this, and from seeing that the needs of the traffic lights to be replaced, this proposal intends to send more traffic to this corner and exit even further down South Terrace, causing sharp braking and causing a lot more awareness of pedestrians in the way. Our apartment building has previously engaged with this council about the fact that we have such a limited view to the north when exiting our driveway. This is due to the fact that we have a power pole and a speed sign that restrict the ability to see north. The chain link fence that currently exists actually helps this problem, and the proposal of this being replaced with a brick wall will increase the risk for future accidents. Additionally, increasing the number of cars exiting onto South Terrace could create further risks of crashes as exiting cars are pulling further into these sight lines. I'm all for good use of this property, but surely this isn't it. And having 90% of the feedback that you've received on this topic being against it should hold weight, as this is our main voice our community has to raise these issues. Thank you.
Thank you. Carrie Ann Harper? Thank you.
For your patience, especially with our 10-month-old.
It's fine.
Yes, my name's Carrie Ann Harper. I'm one of the residents. In fact, my family, Sam just spoke, and Maeve live in the apartment pretty much that abuts the area that's been discussed tonight. I wish to speak in opposition to the officer's recommendation to the DAP to approve the motor vehicle development on the corner of South Street and South Terrace. Like I said, we're uniquely impacted by this proposal. There's a number of reasons why I don't think it should be approved, namely, I don't think it's suitable for this primarily residential area. There's going to be operational hours that operate late into the evening and early morning, and you can imagine with a 10-month-old that's quite concerning. Noise and light issues, just to name a few. I think it's already been mentioned that there's car washes already available in the immediate area. There's one element, though, that I'd like to focus on, and that is in relation to the officer's recommendation, in particular Special Condition 10, which relates to the vehicle access and egress to and from the site. Access is proposed to only allow left turn only from South Street coming from the west. As councillors would know, this section of South Street is frequently filled by residents who are street parking. Transperth buses and general civilian cars already need to weave in and around this section of the road and try to avoid cars trying to enter from South Street from neighbouring streets such as Francisco, Carnac and Atfield. It's hectic at the best of times, let alone with the inclusion of a car wash in this area and any potential for an overflow of vehicles if this car wash was particularly popular. Further, cars are suggested to only leave the car wash through left only via the South Terrace. This, again, we think is plagued by a number of issues. I think my husband might have just spoken about this. Residents of the apartment building are constantly faced with cars who are already incorrectly parked outside of this apartment building. It was an issue that I personally raised with Councillor Kamada, and we were able to get no parking written on the bitumen in front of the apartment building. But unfortunately, as things generally do happen, people don't pay much attention to that, and we still get people parked to the left and right side of the ingress and egress from the apartment building. This means that it's almost unmanageable on a day-to-day leaving and entering into the apartment building. There's already been a number of near misses that have already occurred. I have to pretty much peek my car out ever so slightly to see north and south to make sure that there's no oncoming traffic. And you're already facing Transperth buses, couriers that have large vans that park outside the apartment building, and cyclists that are trying to weave and manage all these vehicles as well. I'm really, really concerned that there's going to be a accident, if not a fatality, in the near future with how it's currently operating, let alone there's going to be a car wash there with people frequently coming in and out in that small little area. Lastly, I think the council owes a duty of care to its residents to consider these unique situations and realise when something is going to be unworkable. Please consider our safety and those of the visitors to the area and use your discretion to reject the officer's recommendation. Thank you so much for your time, councillors and Mayor.
Thank you, and I'm sure officers have taken a note of the concerns about the current situation as well. Ivana Ninic.
Good evening, everyone. I'm here tonight to oppose the proposal. It is a bizarre proposal considering the location. This part of Fremantle is one part of the city that is undergoing a revival, with younger families with kids moving into the neighborhood, buying and renovating heritage-listed houses that had been neglected for decades. The businesses and the family-friendly urban life along South Terrace are Fremantle's most positive story in recent years, attracting investment and bustling with life. The council should be supporting this through its urban planning and strategically building the connection between the city centre and South Fremantle to create continuous, alive, safe, inhabited urban area and counteract the dire state and reputation of Fremantle's centre. The blocks around the intersection of South Street and South Terrace are key to this revival, and the council should encourage investment and development into infill, residential and urban mixed-use businesses premises. A car wash is exactly the opposite of what is needed. It would break that urban link to the city centre for decades to come and discourage walking, cycling and street-level living in the area. A car wash belongs in a suburban, industrialized area, not in the predominantly heritage-listed core of the city. Further, the traffic study, besides referencing traffic data from 2020 and 2021, making it obsolete to the point of being useless, predicts a mild increase in traffic. This is absurd, considering the proposal would add 2 entry and exit points to an already busy and dangerous intersection. The council should review the number of traffic accidents around the intersection. Only in the last year, we have ourselves witnessed 3 potentially fatal crashes just in front of our house. Last year, with cars hitting the posts and parked cars on the side of the road. To realize that the traffic should be slowed down and reduced and not mildly increased. Again, this proposal is located in the residential core of the city centre, where people should be able to walk out of their houses without fearing for their lives and lives of their children. If the council is interested in revitalizing Fremantle and attracting families to live, it should build on and support the organic revival of this area that has been undergoing in the last few years. The traffic should be reduced and slowed down and not increased, and residential infill should be encouraged. There are other parts of the wider city area that are suitable for a car wash. Thank you.
Thank you. And Kylie Grills.
Good evening, thank you. From somebody who also calls South Terrace home, I invite us to consider together whether the best usage for this iconic heritage-listed South Terrace, South Street corner is really a car wash. Is this the best we can do on a primely located soul-filled street so connected to public transport and local Freo businesses? The report for this proposed development concedes that it would require new crossovers on the South Street, South Terrace signals. It also states this superwash will yield an extra 216 vehicle movements per day. I also live on this corner, right next door, and those left in, left out rules are not enforceable. Drivers will still attempt right turns, interrupting the footpath used by hundreds of pedestrians, using the bus stop, parents and school children, cyclists and hospital staff on their way to work. Schedule 2, Clause 67N of the Planning and Development Regulations 2015, also known as the Amenity Test, asks whether a proposal would detract from the character of the locality. Again, I invite us to consider together whether a 1.8 metre concrete screen and queuing cars set 6 metres behind the building line detracts from our beloved boutique Main Street. It's not very Freo, is it? The site falls within the South Fremantle Heritage Area. The city's own heritage officer notes the car wash building is not fully consistent with LPP 3.6, page 74 of today's agenda. A concrete panel shed, murals aside, cannot conserve places of heritage significance as required by Local Planning Scheme 4, Clause 1.6 F and G. Local Planning Scheme 4's mixed-use objectives call for upper-level housing and development not detrimental to the amenity of adjoining owners. This 1,321 square metre block is within 200 metres of 600 plus daily buses and a 10-minute walk of the markets. A modest 3-storey infill similar to the neighbouring 240 South Terrace could deliver 10 to 15 dwellings, permanent customers for local traders, and quadruple the rate space without a single curb cut. Approving a car wash sterilises that opportunity for decades. Thank you.
Thank you. And Adam Flynn?
Good evening, Council. My name's Adam. I live directly across the road from the site with my family. I'm representing them, my partner Claudia, and our little 3-month-old as well. So, look, I own a leaf blower at home. I'd love to use it. We've got some deciduous trees nearby, and it's a fantastic tool. I used to rake, but now I use my leaf blower. But it's loud. It's an obnoxious tool. So I'm careful. As a good neighbour, I try not to use it all the time. Consider it definitely not at 6:30 a.m. on a Sunday. I looked up the manufacturing specs for this brand of leaf blower, and it's at 80 decibels, which is the exact same rating that each of the 4 vacuum cleaners on the site propose. I absolutely concur. The acoustic report is really threadbare. It's done in the papers, and it's wildly optimistic. If you think about a neighbour using up to 4 leaf blowers at one time and 4 car wash bays that make nearly the same amount of noise, you can't have a conclusion that that doesn't detrimentally impact the adversity of the neighbours. Anything else is just completely unreasonable. The proponents suggest that the noise emissions are within the regulatory guidelines or the regulatory limits. But that's not the question here. The question is about the impact of the amenity on the neighbouring properties. The objectives of the planning scheme make that really clear. And there's clearly going to be a significant detrimental impact. The other main point I want to make is about the impact. It's already been made really well, the impact that this proposal would have on pedestrians. I love sitting on the front veranda and watching the absolute stream of foot traffic on a Saturday afternoon go from South Freo down into Fremantle and back the other way. It's really beautiful. It's a beautiful part of living in that area. This is the exact same time that the proponent suggests that the car wash is going to be the most busy. When they'll be leaving the car wash, as it's proposed, they'll have the building to their left, which would block the view of pedestrians coming forward. They'd have the wall to the right, so they'd have to encroach onto the footpath so they could see the oncoming traffic. And it's just it's a disaster waiting to happen. That hasn't been even considered by the proponent. Also note that, we try and be good neighbours to each other, and we try and let each other know, look, we're going to have a party, there's going to be a bit of noise, we'll try to be considerate. This proponent hasn't demonstrated that same kind of consideration as a neighbour. There's been no consultation with myself directly across the road, as I'm aware any other neighbours, so it doesn't bode well for potential issues at the site in the future. This proposal is really clearly well outside the scope of the mixed-use zoning. It's really clear. The proponents had to do some statutory gymnastics to try and get that proposal in there, and Council should definitely recommend to JDAP to not approve it. Thank you.
Thank you, Adam. Kylie Bonser?
Good evening, Mayor, councillors and members of the community. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. I'd also like to acknowledge Councillor Lorva and your acknowledgement of Winterfeld Primary School. I'm Deputy Principal there and I have seen you at RAP meetings in the past. I'm here as a resident of South Fremantle to voice my strong opposition to the proposed 24-hour motor vehicle wash at the corner of South Street and South Terrace. This location is part of a well-loved heritage precinct, an area that reflects the history, character and unique charm of Fremantle. Installing a 24-hour car wash at this corner is completely out of step with that character. It would bring significant noise, traffic and visual disruption to a place that many people call home because of its peaceful, community-focused environment. One of the key reasons I and many others choose to live in South Fremantle is because of its walkability. We value being able to walk or cycle to support local small businesses and to live in a neighbourhood that reflects environmental values and community connection. Encouraging constant vehicle traffic to an automated car wash, especially at all hours of the day and night, directly undermines those values. The fact that the proposed car wash is to be unmanned and open 24 hours a day only deepens the concern. Without any staff on site, the facility could easily become a late night gathering spot, leading to noise, loitering and potential antisocial behaviour that would affect the safety and well-being of nearby residents. Let's not also ignore the traffic impact. This is already one of Fremantle's busiest and most complicated intersections, with heavy use by pedestrians, cyclists and families. Introduced increased vehicle movements in and out of a car wash will only make it more congested and dangerous. This proposal is not in line with the kind of Fremantle we want to live in. It doesn't support our commitment to heritage preservation. It doesn't support our commitment to community safety, of a sustainable people-first development. I urge the Council to listen to the community and reject this proposal. Let's protect what makes South Fremantle special and ensure future developments respect the character and values of our neighbourhood. Thank you.
Thank you. Hans Meaves.
Hello. I am living in 64 South Street and I also oppose this, and I don't want to draw on theoretical reasons. I want to say that we are living next to the Shell station and the budget car rental, and to what this proposal describes in a euphemism as a community hub, and that it would merge and meld in with this community hub. I can tell you that this community hub is nothing but a pain. We have people begging for money at 2 o'clock in the morning. We have noise from the Shell. We have smells. We have a lot going on there. And I think this would happen there too. And I am calling on the proponent because they are saying that their development would be like the, what's called it? A neighborhood center 300 meters eastwards. That is exactly that. This is bullshit because this neighborhood center is one of the crime and drug hotspots. And exactly what the other speaker said before happens. At nighttime, when no one is there, drugs are traded. There is light. Oh, how good. We have people shooting up in our garden. We have things happening there that no one wants next to their house or in their garden. So I think what we are all, and you are planning here, is just some disappointment in the future that can be avoided now. Thank you.
Thank you, Hans. And the last person I have listed to speak is Georgina Hinks.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and councillors. I'm opposed to the car wash. I've lived on Gold Street for 30 years, so I've seen a few changes in the area, a lot of changes. I agree with all the points mentioned. I was just personalising the traffic problem. This is going to be adjacent to the busy South Street, South Terrace junction, which is one of the most heavily used entry points to the city for both private and public transport. And even with the recommended exit point turning left only onto South Terrace, this will make it almost impossible for the residents of Gold Street turning right onto South Terrace towards Fremantle or doing a left turn onto South Terrace heading south. It's almost impossible already. So, and we have to wait for the traffic lights to turn red. Now that will be lost because there will be traffic from the car wash. So that was one of the points for locals. And also, I thought the traffic on South Street, even if there is a left turn, this is a very vulnerable junction where the traffic merges from a single lane into 2 lanes when you get to the traffic light. And it will just be so congested and dangerous with traffic slowing down, trying to turn left into the car wash. The majority of local residents walk around the pavements. That's why we live there. We like to be able to walk into Freo and to the beach, to the hospital, to the schools. And there'll be just so many cars crossing on those 2 points on South Terrace and South Street, which will make it very dangerous for pedestrians. There are 2 car washes a kilometre away on Hampton Road. So we have nobody has ever said that they want to wash their car in our area. I never even wash a car, but anyway, they wash, and people can wash their dogs at the showers at the beach, so that doesn't hold sway either with the dog wash. So I just think it's an incredibly inappropriate proposal, and I hope you'll listen. If there's 90% of people not wanting it, and it takes a lot of effort to come and speak to at these meetings. Most people are too busy living their lives to even bother answering emails or making. I know when I had young children, I would never have done this. So you can 10 times the people that aren't here will be opposing this because they just don't have the time to get to these meetings or make statements or whatever. Thank you.
Thank you. That's all the speakers I have listed. So unless there's anyone else who was hoping to say something. We don't have anyone here from the proponents. So councillors, I'm not sure if there's any questions you want to ask local residents. I think they probably made themselves fairly clear. So we'll start. If somebody would like to move the officer's recommendation. Yep, Councillor Moughlin. Do you have a seconder for that? Councillor Archibald. So on the officer's recommendation, Councillor Moughlin.
Yeah, thank you. And I just want to make it, or first acknowledge the community members for taking the time to come in this evening to speak, and also for providing the input as part of the application process. And I've moved the officer's recommendation this evening for the purposes of us kicking this discussion off, and I will make clear from this point that I very much share the sentiment of the community members and think that this is very much an inappropriate use of the site, which both from the noise and other impacts, including traffic, would detract from the area, and I won't be supporting the officer's recommendation this evening.
Thanks, Councillor Moughlin. I know we have a proposed amendment from Councillor Lorver to the officer's recommendation. Did you wish to move that now? That's up on the screen and seconded by Councillor Lang. Did you wish to speak to that?
Yeah, just briefly, just on the amendment itself, I guess. I'm also not a fan of the overall recommendation, but I'll listen to the debate as it occurs. But if this is approved, this amendment will at least make it marginally better. The other car washes in the area down Hampton Road, they close at 7. And if this was open until 10:30, we'd see an intensification of people coming during the nighttime hours and operating the car wash and vacuums precisely at a period of time when people are trying to get some rest. So I will listen to the debate on the item as a whole, but I move this forward just in case it was approved to at least make it hopefully a little more tolerable. So,
Councillor Lang?
I was just supporting the amendment as a backstop. I concur that the location is outrageous for a car wash from a community perspective, and also possibly from a commercial perspective, given there's a car wash 1 minute down the road. So I can't support this one. I would encourage the applicant to look for a more suitable location somewhere else in Fremantle or O'Connor, etc.
Councillor Sullivan?
Thanks. Yeah, obviously I've got an alternative recommendation to come later if possible. But I will support this amendment, and I wanted to speak about an aspect of this. I won't cover it later on, which is very much about the noise and the potential antisocial behaviour that can occur with these. You know, I love my lifestyle more than my car. I think a lot of people in South Fremantle probably love their lifestyle more than their car. I can't remember the last time it was washed, but that's not the point. The point is that some people love their car a lot more than I do, and some people are absolutely, it is their lifestyle. And there are some people who, certainly in other car washes, do go there and congregate. The one that was in Hilton, and it's a long time ago, but Councillor Archibald might remember it, caused no end of antisocial behaviour that went on for years with a resident immediately behind it, to the point that, you know, it was, you just felt so sorry for the residents there, because anyone could rock up, crack open a carton of beer with their mates, wash their cars, do all the things that they do, similar to, in some ways, to the petrol stations, if not worse. And there was absolutely nothing to control it. And of course, the noise assessments are all about machines, not necessarily the cars, but they're about the machines. And the notion that they can sort of estimate what sort of patron noise there is kind of nonsense. And so that's why, at the very, very least, a land use like this needs to have a degree of control. You know, if it's a pub, at least there is a manager. There's someone there to control it. But at a car wash that doesn't even, you know, have gates that close, it can be that congregation point. And so the 7 p.m. is absolutely critical. It is the time at which the noise regulations change anyway. So there's a 7 p.m. change where things have to be quieter, and then there is a 10 p.m. change. So I certainly think Councillor Lorva's approach to having this is important. I would say that if this was to be considered for approval at the JDAP, then I think you know, the issue of the time, the hours of operation, ought to be a very serious consideration if it gets to that. So thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Sullivan. All right, so we've prosecuted the amendment. Ready to put it to a vote? All those in favour of the amendment? And that's unanimous. Back to the item as amended. Bearing in mind that there is an alternative. So I've got Councillor Lorva and then Councillor Williamson-Wong.
Yeah, just briefly, just thank everyone again for their submissions and statements on this item. And for all the reasons that have been mentioned, I'm still not a fan of this, and so I'll be voting against the officer's recommendation, even though it's now amended. I think this is we want to see more development here than a car wash, and the traffic, everything. I guess I said I wouldn't go through all the reasons, so I won't. I'll leave it there. But I hope we can get to the point where we're debating Councillor Sullivan's alternate recommendation. I'll just leave it at that.
Councillor Williamson-Wong.
Thank you. I'm going to take the opportunity to speak on the item now, and if I think of other things later, we may have an opportunity to discuss again. I'm the first person to say that I love my car, unfortunately, and I love a car wash, but I agree with Councillor Lang that this is an outrageous use of this land. And I will say from the outset that I don't support the proposed development there. I also really don't buy this argument that because a design improves on its original application, that therefore we should approve it. And I think it's a sentiment I've seen in a few development application proposals that have come through to us. The report says it's a substantial improvement on the original proposal, but that to me doesn't necessarily mean that it's appropriate to approve in this location. And I also had another issue with the report as written. It talks about the amenity and it focuses, I understand, a lot on the heritage report, which is around built form. But the amenity, when we're considering such a, I guess, kind of controversial or delicate use, is fundamental. And the report really focuses on the amenity that will be impacted by the built form, so the building itself, how the building fits in with the character of South Terrace and of South Street. And I think it misses the fact that amenity, as defined by the Supreme Court or State Administrative Tribunal, really talks about the impact that use will have. So as all the residents spoke about tonight, there's the built form part of the development, but there's also the fact that there will be all these cars driving through, and that impact on amenity, I think, is far more significant than the built form. I do have a question for staff, if that's okay. I know we had a brief comment on it on Monday, but it would be nice to talk about it tonight. The mixed use area in our LPS 4, the objective says that development in the mixed use zone shall provide for residential at an upper level. Generally, legally, when the word shall is used, it means that it must happen. It's kind of a directive, not a suggestion. Is there a reason that a proposal without residential is still considered in a mixed use zone?
Thanks.
Through the chair, there's no minimum requirement for height. There's no requirement that you must build more than one story. So what that objective is trying to say is that when you are proposing residential, those upper floors should be majority residential, and if you're going to choose to put residential on the ground floor, that there's some kind of activation, because you want commercial activity on the ground floor. So it's not saying every development must have residential.
Okay. Councillor Sullivan?
Thanks. I did want to provide some basic reasons for councillors to consider a refusal. I think the first thing, the really important place to start is this is an A use in the scheme. God knows how it's an A use in the scheme. When you look at some of the other uses which are not permitted in a mixed use zone, you do sort of scratch your head and go, how did this one become an A use? An A use is one, as you know, that we have discretion to approve, subject to the very extensive consultation process that's occurred. And we have to have regard to that. I mean, clearly the A use is there to basically say you really need to check in with the community, the broader community, not just the neighbours, as to this land use. And of course, we've heard back from the broader community, and it's been overwhelmingly, you are kidding, aren't you? You can't put a car wash there. So that's the first part. But as I said, it is a discretionary use. And the issue, I guess, that the most important issue for us to consider is, can we separate the land use component, which is, I guess, conceived in the scheme that it might be possible to use discretion to approve a car wash in these areas, can we separate that out from all of the other requirements? And the answer, of course, is no. Land use is one component of it. So whilst technically speaking, a car wash land use could be approved in a mixed use zone somewhere in Fremantle, I think we also have to very clearly understand all of the other elements. And the most important element of that, I think, in a residential area and in a mixed use area is the built form and the impact it has on residents. So the mixed use zone, first of all, is designed to be that sort of blurring between something that is a centre, like a local centre or a neighbourhood centre, and a more conventional residential area. It's a zone where really the interface between it and the residents needs to be blurred and integrated. It's not something that stands alone. And the second part of that is that the mix is really important. So the combination of uses which really go hand in glove with that surrounding residential area, and do so in a way that serves that community, is of benefit to that community, and is not overly impacting that community. So there are zones where these more industrial types of activities are obviously better located. You know, the neighbourhood centres, the industrial zone, the commercial zones, that's where these types of uses typically are located, and particularly when they're standalone, when they're basically just a building that's a car wash. And I'd like to use the image, a similar type of land use, the fast food outlet. So the suburban model of the fast food outlet, with its drive-through and everything, highway commercial kind of operation, is not dissimilar to this type of land use. And the reality is, when you have that version of a fast food outlet, then you can imagine that's where it needs to go. You know, it needs to go in a highway commercial kind of environment. You wouldn't want to put a Red Rooster or a KFC on this corner. Why not? Because it's, again, the same sort of problem. It's not the sort of thing that actually can be intertwined within this residential and mixed-use zone. You could put a fast food element in a building and not have a drive-through, and it be not the sole activity on the site. So you can have a fast food outlet, or it might be a hamburger shop or whatever, that's in a building that's in a mixed-use zone, but you can't have a fast food that's basically the suburban model. And I want to emphasise that is really the crux of this. This is how you distinguish between whether the land use, which is conceivable to be approvable in the scheme, and whether this version of it in the built form as a standalone land use like it is, should be allowed in this location. And that's really clear in my mind, that in its configuration of land use and form, it's completely unacceptable in this location. There are a whole bunch of other reasons for that, but that is the main one. And if that's not a knockout blow, I don't know what is. So I'll leave it at that, and then hopefully get to the alternative.
Thanks. Councillor Williamson-Wong with a question, I assume?
Yes, I will first say that I agree with everything that Councillor Sullivan has said. You know, it's the great joy of getting to speak after him. But I do want to challenge this notion around the residential, because in the clause is provide for residential at upper level and also at ground level, providing the residential component is designed to contribute positively to an active public domain. So I guess the follow-up question, if I'm challenging you on that, because on that reading of the clause, it means that it should have failed at the first test. It's not actually allowed to be considered in a mixed-use zone, even though it's a permissibility, it's against our objectives, are there other examples of development approvals that we have granted since LPS 4 has come in of a single, like only a commercial use on a site? And I know I probably should have given you this question on notice, I apologise for that, but I can't think off the top of my head of only a commercial project being approved in that specific mixed use area.
Through the chair, development is works and land use. So when you look along pretty well the entirety of South Terrace all the way through to South Freo, that whole strip is mixed use. So even if you've had a change of land use, with that interpretation that you're putting forward, you would need to build an apartment upstairs for every ice cream shop, for every bar, every other commercial use.
All right. I am not sure prosecuting the argument on this is going to advance us if we do also have an alternative recommendation. So I might suggest that we go to a vote on this fairly shortly. Councillor Kamada?
Yeah, thanks. I'll take the opportunity to speak now, and hopefully we'll move quickly to the alternative. Thanks to the speakers that came in tonight and clearly articulated the many reasons why this proposal is wrong. I appreciate that the officers have had to put a lot of work into this, and I don't like going against officers' recommendations unless there's a good reason, and I think there's lots of good reasons tonight. If anyone moves into an area where there's an existing operation, any type of business, you don't really have a right to complain about that business's existence. However, in this case, we've got people that live in an area who are going to be severely affected, their amenity, is going to be severely affected by this change. So I certainly won't be supporting the officer's recommendation and will support Councillor Sullivan's alternative, should that come up.
All right, are we ready to put this one to a vote? Excellent. So all those in favour of the officer's recommendation? Stunned silence. And against? And so the officer's recommendation is lost. So Councillor Sullivan, you have an alternative recommendation?
Thank you. I'll move my alternative recommendation as it's printed in the new additional documents. It's slightly reworded from the version that you would have seen last night.
Thank you. And a seconder for that one, Councillor Kamada. Excellent. Councillor Sullivan.
Thanks. I won't labour the point, but I do want to thank the officers for making great attempts of working with the applicant. I mean, obviously what we're seeing, the version that we saw this time around is better than the previous version, and there's a lot of things that I believe our staff probably encouraged them to do to bring up, a slightly better version of an unacceptable proposal. I wanted to just quickly deal with the point that Councillor Williamson-Wong was raising, because I think it is important to understand. The part of the scheme that she referred to and that I've referred to extensively is essentially the description of the zones. It talks about what should occur in those zones, not on each individual site. So it's a description of the zones, and it tries through a series of dot points to explain what that zone is like. And it can't be applied. It can't be applied in a way that says every site must have all of those things in their development proposal, because that simply wouldn't work. However, it does give a very strong overview and image, if you like, of what the area is supposed to be like. And particularly in a mixed-use zone, you can see quite clearly that it has a fairly significant emphasis on residential. It says that basically anything above the ground floor, effectively must be residential, and anything on the ground floor can be a mix of uses, including residential. So you can see quite quickly that it's actually a residential zone with a mix of other activity in it. It's not like the other zones, like a commercial zone or the like, where you pretty well know it's that type of land use and that's it, right? So we have to think about the mixed-use zone as almost a residential zone with some extra. The other thing to remember about this application is that if this was a residential zone, there is no way in the world that a car wash would be even permitted. It's an ex-use. It's simply not allowed in a residential zone. And the point that I was making before in my previous comment is that if this was inside a building, if this was a two-storey building and the ground floor was a door at one end, you drove in, and inside the building you could wash your dog or wash your car and then get spat out at the other end of the building, and it didn't have any sort of impact on the adjoining properties, and people weren't vacuuming their cars out in the open or hanging around and doing all those other things. If that was the proposal, then it might, in my opinion, be acceptable. But of course, that's not the proposal. So we need to look at what that area, what a mixed-use zone is really trying to achieve. Every development doesn't have to be perfect. That's not how our planning scheme works. It's sort of like a minimum threshold, not trying to get it over a fairly high bar. It's trying to get it through the minimum threshold. But clearly, the definition of a mixed-use zone has a whole bunch of things in it which identify that the typology is much more like what we see for the rest of South Terrace, being buildings that are close to the street, that have commercial shops, little shops, not big, not massive shops, They tend to be things that are serving the very local community. They're creating walkability and a sort of a mini high street, if you like. All of those things, all of those images, you just need to look at the rest of South Terrace down there, is what mixed use is defined as. And clearly this use, this form of this use, is not achieving that. And for those reasons, we need to say it's not acceptable. So that is why my recommendation goes through every one of the definitions of what should be included or what should be allowed in a mixed-use zone, and basically says it ain't achieving it. So if it's not achieving any of them, then it shouldn't be approved. It could achieve them, but not in the form proposed. And for that reason, it should be refused.
Thank you. Councillor Williamson-Wong.
Thank you. I will not repeat what Councillor Sullivan has said, but I do think that what is special about the way that our scheme has been drafted, although I do think we shouldn't have shall in there if we're not actually directing people to do that, is that it talks about the mixed use zones as being their own specific area. So rather than thinking that all of the mixed use zones that we have in the City of Fremantle will be dealt with the exact same way that it's drafted talks about each area being specific. And so I think, as Councillor Sullivan has pointed out, this application, as we are looking at it, fails on all of the metrics because of the unique typology and character of the South Terrace mixed-use zone, South Fremantle mixed-use zone, in being one that is very much a retail and hospitality-focused mixed-use zone that encourages people to be walking and to be actively using the streetscape. And for that reason, this development, while potentially it could be approved in a mixed-use zone, it doesn't work within this mixed-use zone. And I also thought that there were some other provisions of the deemed provisions. So whenever we have whenever we are exercising discretion on something, the kind of factors that the state says we should consider that weren't included in the report, which were really talked about from the residents today. So I thought that was important. One being the suitability of the land for development, taking into account the possible risk to human health and safety, which I think when we're dealing with the car wash and the, logical increase in traffic, that seems appropriate to be considering and have talked about, and the potential loss of any community service or benefit resulting from the development other than potential economic competition. Again, I don't think that we can say, but we should, I wish that this was a different proposal. We have to look at the proposal that's in front of us and assess it and decide whether or not it's compatible or incompatible. But there is a consideration to be had on the loss of a community service or community benefit, and that is probably even down to the fact that currently it's relatively walkable, although I take your point that there's very messy traffic and congestion along there. And, even the fact that currently it's an educational facility is providing more of a community benefit and a community service than the car wash will. And again, I'm a fan of a car wash. Much to everyone's dismay, but I'm very happy to drive to one in the proper location within the proper hours, which is 7 p.m. And to me, this proposal just doesn't pass the pub test in any of the great South Freo pubs that are in this mixed-use zone.
Thank you. Councillor Lorber.
I thank Councillor Sullivan for putting this together and how we put it together. It's kind of a work of art, and it's an art that I hope that the committee members on JDAP appreciate. When exercising discretion, is not something that I really take lightly, but I think in this instance we can do better. I think we should expect better if we're going to be exercising discretion at this location. I won't repeat all the things that have been said, but this is a nightmare intersection, and this proposal just makes it worse, in my view. It makes it worse for the residents. It makes it worse for the people, everyone that's traveling through, be it in a car, on a bike, or the people walking. And I hopefully, if we approve this, alternate recommendation, it sends a message to the owner of the site that we do expect better for this location. We expect better for our city. So thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Lorva. I will try not to extend your evening out too much longer. The only thing I would add, just listening to the community tonight, so I will be supporting the alternative motion by Councillor Sullivan, and at no point did I think this was going to be a good idea, but you know, we go through the process and see what we see. But to the community, I think one of the things that we really noticed up in Hilton around the Hilton shops was that area was such a sort of rat-run, dangerous area until it started getting some human elements, and those human elements included cafes and festoon lights and plants, and council did a bit of that, but you know, it was also the people in that community who did that. And just, I guess you guys all look great together, and I just wonder if you would think about becoming a town team or something that adopts that area, because it is really difficult. It is one of those areas, and we have a similar challenge up the road at Hampton and South Street. That's a really, really tough intersection. It's very tough to fix as well, given there's not a lot of space around it. But, you know, the more areas feel loved and community owned, the less likely people are to do really silly things in them. And we've seen driver behaviour being a major focus across the state with the road toll recently. I think everyone who's saying that it is a risk that we run in our community is not wrong. So just I want to commend you for making the effort to come out tonight, and going forward, I just think there's an opportunity there that I'd love to embrace with the community in terms of that area becoming and feeling a little bit more community owned. All right, do we have any further speakers on the alternative motion? All right, it looks like I'm going to put it to
Quickly close by saying,
Councillor Sullivan to close.
Yeah, that we need to remember that this is just, if it gets passed, a recommendation to DAP, and they are the decision maker. You know, I'd encourage community to acknowledge that we've had a lot of debate here tonight about this, and I felt it was necessary to do that because it's not an easy one to land on the right planning situation, and it would be challenging at DAP, and it would even be a challenging one if it went to appeal. So I do emphasise that this is one step in a process, and it's really important that all of us acknowledge that and appreciate that there's more work to be done.
Thanks, Councillor Sullivan. I'll put this one to a vote. All those in favour of the alternative motion, and that's unanimous. And so that goes through to DAP. I'm not sure if the date has been set yet, but you can stay updated, I think, via MySay, and contacted directly, even better. So please make yourself heard at the DAP meeting as well. All right, so going back to the agenda, again, you don't have to stay, you're very welcome to. We'll go back to Keegan Street. Councillor Archibald, perhaps you'd like to move this one, given that you've got an amendment on it. And can I get a seconder for this one? Councillor Graham, did anyone wish to speak prior to the amendment? All right, let's go to Councillor Archibald's amendment then. And we'll pop that up on the screen.
Move the amendment.
And seconded by Councillor Lorva. Did you wish to speak to the amendment?
I'll just say very briefly that, just to speak in favour of it, that the applicant has kind of reoriented the building on the site, so it does mean that more trees are being retained, but there is a real opportunity to have the verge continue right up to the corner with plantings that would be consistent with what the person on the southern side of the site has done. So it's just a great opportunity, and it'd be good to see if we can get the applicant to do it. Thanks.
Excellent. Anything further on the amendment, or should we put it to a vote? Okay, all those in favour of the amendment, and that's unanimous. Back to the item as amended. Then any speakers? Councillor Lorva?
Yeah, just briefly, because this is one of the first ones that came through to us after we adopted our new tree retention policy. And when we went on site for the visit with Councillor Sullivan and Councillor Archibald, the owner, the person who purchased the site, he didn't actually even bat an eye about having to comply with the policy. And he has dealt with similar tree retention policies in other jurisdictions in Perth. And he was more than happy to try to accommodate the retention of that tree on the corner, as well as saving a nice mature gum by moving the crossover as well. So I think that this is a great outcome, and it shows that the policy is saving trees. It doesn't save every tree, but it's saving some really beautiful trees there in O'Connor, and we're going to get a better outcome for it. And like I said, the owner was more than happy to work with our new policy to make it happen.
Excellent. All right, should we put this one to a vote? All those in favour? And that's unanimous. We've got 2 remaining items on the planning reports. Does anyone wish to speak to either of them? So 25074, 25075. We could potentially do 25076 as well in that, and then I might do the CEO one separately just in case people want to talk to that. All right, so I'm going to move those 3, 4, 5 and 6 on block. Can I have a mover for that? I usually look to Councillor Thompson, but surely there's someone else. Councillor Lang, seconded by Councillor Moughlin. All those in favour? And that's unanimous. All right, the CEO performance review, as chair of that, did you want to move that, Councillor Lorver? Yep, and a seconder for that one, Councillor Sullivan. So I don't know if there is any discussion of that and whether we want to kick the CEO out for any discussion or what the process is. We could just put it to a vote if it's fairly straightforward. Personally, for me, it's very straightforward. No? Okay. Councillor Moughlin?
I suppose I just wanted to make a comment on the report itself and also in light of, I suppose, some headlines around in regards to local council dysfunction or otherwise. And I just wanted to acknowledge the work that the CEO has done working with our council and supporting us in the decision-making processes and ensuring that that we understand and that we abide by the requirements that we have as a local government and helping us to function well and to deliver the outcomes for our local community. So it's most probably often overlooked as to the important role that the CEO does play in the functioning of the city, and I think we are very fortunate to have the CEO that we have in place at the moment and the outcomes that we're seeing through that. So thank you for the work that goes into that.
Thanks, Councillor Moughlin. I think I would echo those sentiments, and as someone who gets to talk to quite a lot of other local governments and local government elected members, I actually think our CEO is the envy of a lot of other local governments, and they can't believe how harmonious the relationship is, not just within this room, but with officers and staff across the city as mediated through the CEO. And I think we don't know how lucky we are in a sense, because we don't sit in all of, in other rooms and understand what it might be like to be somewhere else. But I think Fremantle's a unique community and it takes unique people to do the job. And I think what we've seen with Glenn as the CEO is the ability to really manage, I guess, what is a complicated community, complicated issues that come to council, complicated discussions, but all in a respectful and harmonious way. So I kind of want to publicly acknowledge that. And I think looking at how staff feel about the CEO through the reporting that we've seen means that it's not just elected members who are living in this world, it's also staff who are very lucky to be managed by someone who cares a lot about their well-being. So congratulations to Glenn if this is approved, which it sounds like it will be. All right, Councillor Williamson-Wong.
Thanks. I'm going to jump on the bandwagon. No, when I was reading this report, it was, I agree, very interesting and great to see the key staff also having input into the document. But I think actually more broadly in not realising how lucky you are, often people will talk to me when they realise that I'm on council and say, oh, does anyone ever take you seriously, as the first question. And in hindsight and reflection, I'm very lucky that we have a CEO who was willing to take on someone who's young and a girl, God forbid, and not treat me any differently, which should be the norm, but it's not, and I think it filters down through the staff, so I'm very grateful for that.
Thanks, Councillor Williamson-Wong. All right, I am going to put this one to the vote. All those in favour? And that's unanimous. Thank you. There are no statutory reports, committee reports, motions of which previous notice has been given, no urgent business, no late items, no confidential business, so I can declare the meeting closed at 7:46. Thank you.